She was definitely in the hot seat.
Steph, just following up on Caitlin from earlier, she didn't practice yesterday. Why was she not listed on the injury report, or why wasn't the injury report updated like earlier today if she woke up with soreness in her back?
Well, not everybody that doesn't practice or gets a pro day is on the injury report, so that happens all the time. And she wasn't listed on the injury report earlier because we expected her to play.
And is she injured? I guess is a fair question. Is she injured, or is it something other than an injury?
Her back is sore, so if there's anything more detailed than that, that's the training staff.
Do you think the Fever could get fined for not listing her as on the injury report?
Watch a head coach trying to thread a needle in real time. Stephanie White just told reporters Caitlin Clark was expected to play tonight, and then in the same breath admitted she woke up with back soreness. Both of those things cannot comfortably be true, and one of them is going to cost the Indiana Fever something.
So yes, Caitlin Clark is on the injury report and did not play in tonight's game, and the reason given was load management. And a healthy Caitlin Clark is the #1 priority, of course. However, there are a couple of things about the situation that kind of feels a little bit off. Alexa Philippou of ESPN actually did say that this is something the league might be wanting to look into, and the reason for that being is because the day before, May 19th, Caitlin did
100 minutes before tip-off. That's the window we're talking about. The Indiana Fever updated the injury report less than 2 hours before the Portland Fire game on May 20th, scratching the most marketable player in the sport for what they're calling load management. And it's not a fan blog asking questions. It's Alexa Philippe at ESPN reporting the league office may want a closer look at how this was handled.
PM the day before a game, unless it's the second day of a back-to-back game. And as it states right here, teams must designate a participation status and identify a specific injury, illness, or other medical condition or other reasons for any player whose participation in the game may be affected for any reason. For the second game of a back-to-back, teams must report the above information by 1 p.m.
Read the rule again. By 5 p.m. the day before a game, teams must designate participation status and identify a specific injury, illness, or other medical condition. The Fever did not list Clark on May 19th. She did not practice on May 19th. And by Stephanie White's own admission, the team was getting her treatment instead of putting her on the floor. That is the exact scenario the policy was written to cover.
Stephanie White did talk about why Caitlin didn't practice, saying that she was getting treatment instead and that she had woken up today, which is May 20th, the day of the game, with stiffness. And the quote that Chloe got from Stephanie White was, "For us, it's not time to take a chance." Says she does not anticipate it being ongoing, but adds that she is not a doctor. Caitlin has been wearing a back brace all.
Chloe Peterson, the Fever beat reporter, got a more revealing answer. The quote from Stephanie White, "For us, it's not time to take a chance." That is not the language of a routine off day. That is the language of a team trying to protect an asset and hoping the timing of the disclosure doesn't blow up in their face.
The injury from last season, her ankle injury, I think was very poor communication on the team's part, and therefore a lot of fans do not trust a lot of what comes out about any sort of injuries from the team. And there's validity to that. It's kind of like a fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me type situation. And this is a shady situation. It's just odd, you know? And when you have ESPN reporters saying that the league might be looking into this, there could be something to it. And unfortunately, things like this do affect the league. The attendance was at an all-time low since Caitlin Clark has.
Here is the receipt nobody at Gainbridge Fieldhouse wants you pulling up. Last season, the Indiana Fever handled Caitlin Clark's ankle injury with the same fog machine. She was geared up. She was set to return. They talked about it publicly. Then she was suddenly out again, and the actual severity of that ankle did not match what fans had been told. That history is why a load management ruling at 100 minutes to tip is not landing as a routine precaution. It is landing as a pattern. And look at how Aliyah Boston has been talked about all season. She kept calling her own issue a lower leg injury. No joint, no muscle group, no specifics. The culture inside that medical staff is to say as little as humanly possible. That works fine until it collides with a league that has actual deadlines.
Stephanie White said at face value, and Caitlin Clark was expected to play, then one could assume that it was Caitlin Clark's decision not to play. Or a combination of Caitlin and her trainer. But with the way that the Indiana Fever dealt with her injury last season, and she was all set to return, geared up to hit the floor, they were talking about it, and then all of a sudden she was out again, and the ankle injury was withheld. it is very hard to gain the trust of the organization for a lot of people. And there's definitely a little caginess involved. I mean, even the way that Aliyah Boston talked about her own injury, she kept calling it lower leg injury. They definitely do not want to go into...
Take Stephanie White at her word, and the picture changes again. If Caitlin was genuinely expected to play, then the decision to sit her was either made by Clark herself, by Clark and her training staff, or by someone calling an audible inside the last 2 hours before tip. Any of those scenarios is a story, because the league requires that decision to be reported before 5 p.m. local time the day before. The window had already closed by the time anyone in Indianapolis admitted there was a problem. This is also where the second part of the rule matters. The exception, the 1 p.m. day of deadline, only applies to the second game of a back-to-back. Tuesday's game against Portland was not a back-to-back. There is no procedural cover.
That the bottom line is there should be more transparency about this type of issue, because I did get a message today that someone had just driven 4 hours to go see Caitlin Clark, only to find out that she's not going to be playing. Whether you do or don't believe that people should be fans of the Indiana Fever or Caitlin Clark, that's not really like up to us to decide. That's up to the people that bought the ticket to decide, you know? Anyway, I do think that there should be more transparency on the issue. I think there's a lot riding on this in particular, and I also really hope that everything is okay. But because there is so much riding on this particular situation, this is not going to go unnoticed. In other news, I'm going to briefly touch on the game.
The fan piece of this is the part the front office is going to feel the longest. Someone drove 4 hours to Gainbridge tonight to watch number 22 play. That ticket was bought on the assumption that the most disclosed star in the sport would be on the floor. Attendance at Gainbridge tonight was reported at an all-time low for any Caitlin Clark home game. And that number is not a coincidence. Word traveled through Fever Twitter the second the report was updated. Now stack that on top of a national audience that has been told for 2 years this league is finally being treated like a professional product. Professional products do not communicate this way. The NBA does not communicate this way. The NFL does not communicate this way. And the league office knows it.
Almost like perfect 35 seconds where the Indiana Fever almost stuffed the stat sheet. They were just 1 steal short, and you can almost consider what KK did a steal with this, but it started with an Aliyah Boston block, of which was grabbed by KK, which, you know, not technically a steal, but kind of like a steal, given to Ty Harris, who got it to AB, who gets it to Kelsey, for the assist to AB, who shoots a three-pointer. I love AB shooting three-pointers. How many did she shoot in this game? She was 2 for 4 at the three-point line. That is amazing. And Aliyah Boston...
Even the basketball itself is making the case for transparency. The Indiana Fever beat the Portland Fire 92-73. And they did it while currently ranking number 1 in pace and number 6 in defense across the entire league. That is a top contender's profile. Aliyah Boston went for 24 points and shot 2 for 4 from the three-point line, which transforms the pick and roll into a pick and pop that nobody in this league has a clean answer for. Lexi Hull went 4 for 4 from deep and finished with 16. Sarah Ashley Barker, the same player who hit the buzzer beater against the New York Liberty, looked sharp again. This is a team built around Caitlin Clark, and it just demonstrated it can blow out an expansion roster without her. So the question that grows out of tonight is not whether the Fever can win a game without their star. The question is whether the franchise has earned the benefit of the doubt the next time her name gets quietly added to the injury report at 4 in the afternoon. Because the league office is now paying attention. The beat reporters are now paying attention. And as of tonight, so are the people who used to just buy the tickets. The Fever might get fined. Stephanie White was asked that exact question in the press conference and did not answer it. The collective bargaining agreement does not have a massive financial penalty for a first offense on injury reporting, but the precedent it sets matters more than the dollar figure. The league has been pushing hard for the WNBA to be covered like the NBA. Coverage like the NBA means scrutiny like the NBA. And under NBA standards, a star being scratched 90 minutes before tip without prior practice attendance and without prior listing would have triggered a formal review by morning. There is also the human layer of this that I think gets lost in the policy conversation. Caitlin Clark is 23 years old, in her second professional season, coming off a postseason that ended with a quad injury and a groin injury that almost certainly compromised her availability in last year's playoff series. She has been wearing a back brace the entire season. Red light therapy panel between possessions. Heating pad during timeouts. That is not the maintenance routine of a player who feels great. That is the maintenance routine of a player who is managing something every single night, and whose body has been telling her staff something that does not quite fit on an official injury form. So when Stephanie White says she does not anticipate this being ongoing, but then adds that she is not a doctor, that is a coach trying to be honest about uncertainty. And honest uncertainty is not the same thing as a violation of policy. Those two ideas have to live in the same paragraph. The medical decision to sit Clark may have been completely correct. The procedural decision to disclose it 90 minutes before tip rather than the night before was not. The cleanest path forward for the Fever is not complicated. List her status when the rule requires it. Use the actual injury designations the league provides. Stop calling everything a lower leg or a back tightness. Treat the fans the way you would treat a season ticket holder for any major league franchise. Because the alternative is what happened tonight, which is a half-empty Gainbridge Fieldhouse, an ESPN reporter floating a league investigation, and a coach in the post-game hot seat trying to explain two contradictory statements in the same answer. There is one more piece worth sitting with. The Portland Fire are an expansion team. Carla Leite, who played in this game, is genuinely fast enough that I had to double-check I wasn't watching the broadcast at 1 1/4 speed. Portland has pieces. They are also the team that just beat the New York Liberty on a buzzer beater from Sarah Ashley Barker. That win matters because it changes who counts as a soft scheduling night for the Fever and who does not. The decision to load manage Clark against Portland in May reads differently if Portland is actually a competent roster building towards something. And early indications are that they might be. That brings me back to where this started. The Indiana Fever destroyed the Portland Fire by 19 points. Aliyah Boston was magnificent. The pace, the spacing, the rebounding all looked like a top 3 team in this league. And not a single one of those things is going to be the headline tomorrow morning. The headline is going to be the injury report. The headline is going to be the timing. The headline is going to be whether the league fines the Fever for non-compliance with their own published rules. That is a self-inflicted wound. None of it had to happen this way. So the question I am leaving with you is this. Do you believe Stephanie White when she says Caitlin was expected to play and woke up sore? Or do you think the Fever knew the night before, sat on it, and hoped the league would let them slide because the disclosure window technically had not fully expired in their interpretation? You cannot land on both. Pick one. Tell me in the comments which version you actually believe. Because the answer to that question is going to tell us a lot about how this fan base feels about its own front office heading into the rest of this season. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and I will see you back here tomorrow when we get into the full Aliyah Boston tape from this game. Because what she did from the three-point line tonight changes everything about how the Fever can be defended.